What's up, Buckeye Nation? Floco here, Ohio State football with Scarlet and Great right here on YouTube with a special guest today. We're going to talk about the quarterback situation, which I know is on everybody's head right now. Dan Jivjak from the Best Damn Pod in the Land. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you bringing me on and having a little bit of chatter and chopping it up a little bit about something I've become a little passionate about. So I appreciate the invitation. Want to give a shout out to my co-host Chad over there on the pod, and I'm here representing.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here to talk about actually Dan's going to educate me a little bit here because I watch on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, and I see there's a lot of Devin Brown faithful. I mean, he has a lot of fans in his corner, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think the guy's talented. I just haven't seen him yet. So I'm kind of have Dan educate me on why there's so many people so devoted to what Devin can do. And to little backstory here, when he was recruited, I actually was really happy to have him as a Buckeye because his moxie, when first thing he said was, "I wish Quinn Ewers was still here." I actually love that comment from a guy. He's like, "I came here to compete with the best," and the guy left. So,
yeah.
Anyway, so Dan, help me out here. What is it about Devin that his faithful fans see that thinks he should be the starter?
Yeah. So, interesting you said, about Quinn. I think that when he committed, the expectation was that McCord would leave and that he'd get to compete against Quinn. And they had just been on the Elite 11 circuit and he had outperformed him all summer. So he was all about it. But let me just back up for a second and make sure people understand kind of where I'm coming from. So I went to a high school in Arizona called Mesa Mountain View. Same high school that somebody in, some of the folks in Buckeye Nation might know, a kid by the name of Joe Germain.
Yeah.
And he was a few years behind me. Well, Devin played for Joe at Queen Creek High School.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started following his career early on. Joe actually went back to my alma mater to coach before Devin's senior year. And they had a rule where you can't transfer to follow your coach. So he had an opportunity. He needed to know what to do. And, he ended up in Utah. And this is kind of where I started to get a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for the kid, or just really enjoy his makeup and his moxie, as you said, is that he went to a school at Copper Canyon where the guy that was leaving was a guy by the name of Jackson Dart, starter at Ole Miss right now, right?
Yeah.
Shattered all the records. That didn't scare him at all to follow something like that. The incumbent or the guy that was apparently going to take over the job next is a kid by the name of Isaiah Wilson, younger brother of Zach Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And they more or less told Devin, hey, it's going to be an uphill battle. Like, Isaiah's been waiting. He's like, I don't care. And he went up there and he competed. He won the job and he shattered all of Jackson Dart's records. So, there's that moxie that he had that I really, really liked, which you've already referenced as to why, we were excited when he did sign as a recruit. It was a great late pickup. He had been committed to USC. Helton left. Recruitment was reopened. A lot of folks don't realize, but Chip Kelly went after Devin really, really hard out of high school.
That I didn't know.
So he went after him really hard, which I've wondered, what sort of an impact will that have on this quarterback race, the familiarity. So, it's that old school mentality that, that really made me like him to begin with. And I don't think there'd be a lot of disagreement with that from Buckeye Nation. People liked it. He's kind of showed it a little bit when he committed, and he's got his selective tweets that he throws out with the all in. He did the Rounders thing, right? And then he did the burn the boats thing. So that's what kind of made me really like him to begin with. Last year, I thought that he should have won the job. I know there's been a lot of chatter over the last year as to what really happened. I know for a fact that he was told he was the starter about 10 days out from the first game. Then he laid an egg a day or two in practice, had probably the worst practices of his career. At that point, there's been some things out there about McCord's father taking advantage of that. And quite frankly, in my opinion, I think he took advantage of days and experience with a quarterback competition. And he's like, listen, if Kyle doesn't start, we're going to sit. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And I think they panicked and he put Kyle in there. I think that the plan was to, give them an opportunity there at the beginning. And then that first Indiana game was so bad that I just think they got a little tight. Quite honestly, we've seen it in the Michigan game over the last few years. on the sideline. He's really tight. Little bit of a knock on him. So, having known that, and I just want to be clear, there's some other outlets out there that have announced this. When they announced some of what I just told you last year, I actually knew it before they announced it. I wasn't even following those outlets at the time. So, there's that I think he got a raw deal. I think a lot of Buckeye Nation will, him and Hahn maybe poo-poo that a little bit. But I just, knowing what I know, I really kind of felt bad for the kid. And then, you take it further, and what happened last year, he completely stepped out of his comfort zone, agreed to play a role that was not suited to his game. And I think that it's really put a bad perception on him. I think there's a lot of folks out there that think that Devin Brown is Tim Tebow or JT Barrett. And that's not his game. He is not a runner. He's not a dual threat guy. He's a drop back pocket passer that's got enough mobility to extend plays and scramble here and there, but he's not a QB, run guy. He's not JT Barrett or Tim Tebow, but he did what he needed to do to help the team. And that enamored him to me even more. So a lot of what I'm saying, it kind of sounds emotional, and maybe it is, but I'm just, I like old school grit. I like old school moxie. I like old school competitiveness. I like somebody who's not going to back down, from from a fight. And that's endeared him to me. So that's probably a lot of why I think that, I root for him and I pull for him. Okay. Football side of things, I'll let you kind of jump in at this point and go.
Oh, there. No, you're fine. Yeah, no, we wanted to hear your story. That's why I asked you to come on. What's funny is I agree with you that I didn't understand the whole hype last summer about his dual threat. I understand he's more athletic than Kyle was, but I also thought, I was like, dude, even Mark Givler came. I said, dude, they're making him out to be Michael Vick, and that's not his game. And because that was the whole from the I'll say the menace side of things. It was he's so athletic he can make. I'm like, yeah, he can scramble a bit. We've seen that, but I didn't understand Ryan Day's implementation of his game in the Indiana game specifically when he's like power run with it's almost like Urban Meyer was running the offense again,
right?
And I didn't understand, and now I'm not in the know. I don't have a bunch of sources behind this. It made me, like a regular fan, think to myself, does he just not trust Brown as a passer? Because I know he can pass the ball. I know that. But it's just made me, what is Ryan Day not letting him kind of come in and run the offense? It was painfully obvious what he was doing with Devin. And then it went back in the middle of the season and we said, well, how can we get Devin more in the game? And we ended up going to that power run scheme in the red zone to try to develop red zone points and things like that. Because whether it was Kyle McCord or Dwayne Haskins, we struggle with non-running quarterbacks in the red zone. So I understood the strategy behind it, but I didn't understand why can't you let him drop back and throw the ball a little bit?
I've got a theory on that. So here's my take on it is that, number one, he panicked. He knew that if he lost McCord, he knew he wasn't going to lose Devin if Devin wasn't named the starter last year. Devin wasn't going anywhere. McCord, there was those overtones that he might sit if he didn't get the starting job. And I've never met Kyle's dad. I know some people that have, and they said, you know what, we can see him doing that. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole on that, though. But here's what I think happened. I think that Day said to himself, you know what? We're coming off a season where our defense let us down. We still don't know what we have with the defense. Going into that Indiana game, we very well could have given up the same type of plays that we did against Georgia and Michigan and been back, at the same place. But I think what happened was he said, you know what? We can't afford to turn the ball over if our defense isn't going to help us. Kyle's the safer option to start the season. And then once I think he realized that our defense had improved greatly, I think he started to look at it and say, you know what, how can I get Devin back into the game? I think, and I've heard that the coaching staff, when it came time, like in midseason, that they started to feel like Devin was going to be the best chance to beat Michigan, that they were going to need that, ability to scramble for a first down, 2 or 3 times a game. And then that's why they started to put him into that run package, was to start to work him into the game plan more and more. I'm convinced that if he had been healthy in the Wisconsin game, that he would have taken over in the second half and never looked back. Because I do believe the staff thought he was our best chance to beat Michigan. So I think it was a combination of not knowing what the defense was going to look like going into the year, and then realizing that it was a lot better than he ever thought it would be, that he could afford to play with Devin, and that risk, that perceived risk that honestly I haven't seen, but it's out there. He's a gunslinger, right? Everybody talks about him being a gunslinger. So that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's what I was quote unquote hearing. Again, I have like a couple, one or two sources and stuff like that. I don't have a million people, but it could be wrong. Was that, Devin obviously in camp was showing more big play potential than Kyle, but Kyle was kind of a steady Eddie, not making a ton of mistakes. He kind of got picked on by the fan base with that check down Kyle.
Right.
But sometimes that's just the right decision. But obviously sometimes you have to go for it. And I think Devin's more of a go for it guy. And that can, I grew up with Brett Favre. That can really help you, and it can also really hurt you at times. And I could definitely see what you're saying, that maybe Ryan goes into it like not quite sure what he has with his team. There's a lot of veterans that had left the year before. Does Devin go in and light it up for 4 touchdowns, or does maybe he throws a couple picks and we're in a bind all of a sudden against bad teams? But again, so you could also go into saying that Kyle sometimes didn't move the ball enough that we had gotten that bind anyway. So
that's fair.
I look at it as they were yin and yang, different styles in a way, but it's just Ryan had to choose which one to go with. And I think we also expected Kyle to get better as the season went on, and he really didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that confused me, because I've seen CJ struggle at times too. Not that Kyle is CJ, don't get me wrong, but you saw CJ just continuously get better and better and better. And I was like, okay, this guy's showing. And I expected Kyle to have not a huge, massive NFL type leap, but at least like, okay, after the Notre Dame game, especially, I thought Kyle was gonna, okay, now it's time to move on. But do you think you would have seen that kind of growth that we didn't see with Kyle? You see it with Devin if he got to start from the jump.
I do. And the only thing I have to go off of is his high school film. I mean, those folks out there that rail against him or are adamantly against him, I understand where they're coming from. Mm-hmm. I do think some of it's narrative and assumptions that people have made. I like to go with what I've seen with my own eyes. Mm-hmm. And with Devin, all we have to go off of prior to last year was his high school film. And his high school film was one of the top 10 high school films I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. My boy Juck on Bucks talks about that all the time, and I agree with him. His high school film was phenomenal. And so I know that player is in there. Yeah. So I do think that going into the season, let me kind of answer it this way. Going into the Indiana game, I was telling people, listen, when Devin gets his chance, you need to expect him to be a little shaky at first. He's going to be seeing his first college action.
I agree.
He's going to have the jitters. He's going to be amped up because that's the type of kid that he is. Mm-hmm. And we saw that when he finally did get into the games early on. But I think that once he starts to settle in, I think that he's a rhythm guy. I think that we would have seen way more progress from him than we saw from Kyle. We certainly wouldn't have seen regression. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I firmly believe that. We're never going to know. But yeah, I do. I've said it all along. If Devin had been afforded the same opportunity that Kyle was to start those games and grow in those early games, I think he would have progressed significantly more than Kyle ever did. We're kind of in the same boat that we are now.
Yeah, a little bit. The only thing I'd say Will Howard has on Devin, obviously, is game experience right now. That's I wouldn't say talent. I wouldn't say I don't think Will Howard came in as a guy like Cam Ward. If he had come in, I'd be like, Cam's probably going to be the starter. But when Will Howard came in, I wasn't like overly wow, yay. I was like, okay. I thought about it for a while, and let me see if you agree with me on this. We talked a little bit off air. I don't think Will Howard was brought in to, you got to be the starter because we paid you money and this and that to get you here. I think it's more, well, gee, we got Devin. And look, I'm not trying to knock the kid. I think he's extremely talented, but he's gotten injured a few times. Mm-hmm. If he gets injured, say, we go first game and Devin's the guy, he gets injured. I don't know what we have behind him, So it's almost like, well, we need a veteran presence here. And if with Devin's the guy, we need somebody like, I think I'd be confident enough of Will Howard we can still win. But if Lincoln are winning or if true freshman, I'd be like, well, season just became a lot shakier now. But I'm saying that I feel confident in Devin and I feel confident in Will, but I think Devin's probably more talented, but Will was brought in to be like, okay, we need at least some insurance on this.
It's like, when we were off air, I referred to it as good business. I would have made the exact same decision as Ryan Day made. I would have been looking to bring somebody in, and if you were able to, pull in a Cam Ward or Dylan Gabriel or guys that just had gaudy stats and were just kind of already the guys, then great. But when those options fell through, I think my understanding is we cast a lure into the water on Dylan, and it was pretty much shot down right away. We did offer Cam Ward. Miami stepped in and offered him $1 million, or I'm sorry. Cam Ward wanted more money than we wanted to give him. I think the number was, we were at about 500 and he wanted more than that. And then when Cam was talking to Miami, but still trying to decide between Miami and the NFL, they got involved with Howard and they threw the $1 million number at him. And now all of a sudden it's like, we don't have a choice but to pay Will $1 million if we want that insurance plan. So yeah, I think that, and all of that's led to the narrative that's going on right now in Buckeye Nation, which is, well, Will's got to start. We paid him all this money. I don't know. I mean,
I agree with you on that, by the way.
You think he's got to start?
No. I agree with where you're going. I'm sorry. I agree with where you're going with this. Because I think the boosters care more about winning than they do whatever money they gave Will Howard. So.
I do. Now, it was interesting. I was in a Twitter space last week with Jay Book and Biddle when they interviewed Brian Schottenstein and Cardale from the foundation. And I asked Cardale, I said, is there pressure on Ryan to start Will because of the nil package? And he goes, well, it's probably a better question for the coach, but yeah, I would imagine there is. Now, I'm not convinced he understood what I was asking. I was asking, are the boosters putting pressure on him? And I didn't phrase it the right way. And I think he answered it differently. So we'll never know, what he really meant by that. But I think Buckeye Nation will be fine if Devin goes in there and leads us to a natty. They're not going to care about that $1 million.
Boosters aren't going to be like, dang it, we should have had Will.
But, to your point, it's an insurance policy. And Devin, all we've seen from him on the Buckeye field is him getting dinged up. And it's unfortunate because he had zero history of that in high school. None. He didn't get hurt his freshman year at all here. My buddy Juck, he gave the analogy the other day on Twitter about, he looks at it as somebody that threw 3 picks. If you heard somebody threw 3 picks, you're going to tell them they're turnover prone. I mean, look at McCord last year. Would it be fair to call McCord turnover prone after the first half against Wisconsin? He didn't turn the ball over much the rest of the year. So he's not turnover prone. He was that half.
Yeah.
But with Devin's injuries,
you can't gauge one practice and say he's turnover prone. Yeah.
Right. And with the injuries with Devin, like, I think you need to put some of those things in perspective. Like his finger, he went up today and he said, I want to go live. This was in camp. I want to go live. I want quarterbacks to be live. I want to show what I can do. And Day said, okay. And he snapped his finger on a helmet. It's happened a million times with quarterbacks.
Yes, it is.
So you got this guy, that, he wants to be the dude, and he snapped his finger on a helmet. Does that make him injury prone? I think it was a fluke accident. The first ankle injury last year against Penn State, I mean, he's in there playing like Tebow, but not built like Tebow. He's in a pile of
was
guys.
It Penn State or Purdue? I thought it was Purdue. Did he play against Penn State? Did he play against Penn State?
Yeah, he got hurt against Penn State.
Oh, why? I forgot about that.
I was there in Ohio Stadium when that happened.
I thought it was Purdue when he ran in the goal line and just got hurt.
No, in Purdue, he got his first touchdown at the goal line, and then he fumbled the second time. So he didn't get hurt, but he fumbled.
Oh, that's what it was.
He didn't protect the ball, got knocked out as he was extending for the line. So yeah, Purdue, he actually played pretty well. He had that really nice pass to Innis for the touchdown. Yeah. I saw him starting to get a little bit more confidence in that game.
Why I thought it was Purdue. In my head the whole time it was Purdue. Okay.
No. It was Penn State at home. And, I mean, I can't fault the guy for playing in a way that's not really his game and getting an ankle twisted in a pile like that. And then, he tweaks it and warm-ups a few weeks later, trying to come back early. The only injury last year that I think you can kind of raise an eyebrow on is the non-contact injury, right? Against Missouri. It's like, and at that point, it's just like, man, it's just par for the course this year. So, he's
burned this year to the ground. Move on next year.
Well, at least that game, it was just a disaster. What got lost in that game was how well our defense played.
Defense. You know what? It made me so angry when people were saying, "Oh, defense crap the bed in the fourth quarter." They do 14 points to that offense, and our offense couldn't even stay on the field to save their lives.
No,
Come on.
they played 3/4 of the game at that point.
And we didn't even have Caleb Downs.
Right. But this year so far, he stayed healthy. I think he dropped about 15 pounds and really leaned out. He told Jenny Taff on Saturday that, he's just happy that his body's 100%. And there's, he doesn't have to worry about that stuff anymore. So again, there's no history there. There's no nagging injuries. Like my buddy Juck said, it's kind of like you hear somebody threw 3 picks and then you realize that the first one was bad. The second one was a Hail Mary, and the third one, the receiver fell down, right? That's kind of the way I look at his injuries last year. It's a great analogy.
I got you. So, that's bobbled it up in the air. Where I love with those interceptions, the receiver bobbles it up in the air and it goes against the quarterbacks. Okay, that's fair. Okay, great. I mean, that's a good explanation of how we see his injuries going forward. So I agree. I've called him injury prone, but I think what you're saying is more accurate. And I think it's probably more fair. And look, if he's the starter this year, I'm perfectly happy. I wish he changed the number. I ain't gonna lie, but
it's been since Pee Wee football for that kid, in my understanding. The only year he didn't wear it was his freshman year here, and then his year in Utah because somebody else already had it.
I'm certainly not going to knock him for it, but it's just it's just odd to see it. It's because it actually somehow makes you look like a fullback. I don't know how, but it does.
Well, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but him and Jack Sawyer, when they got their helmets on, they look like they could be brothers.
Yeah, they do.
Facially, and they're wearing the same number. And I remember the first time I saw it, I'm like, man, Devin's getting big.
Last year I think he probably knew they were going to run him a little bit, and he had to put some beef on. I mean, and it's unfortunate. He's probably even more agile now if he's dropped over 15 pounds or so. I saw him scramble in the spring game. I was like, okay, see, that's where he could be dangerous. It's like 3rd and 6, and he can go get it for you.
Yep.
And it reminds me of a JT with a better arm. So much better arm, much.
Yeah, yeah. He reminds me a little bit of I'm going to get hammered. I don't care. I'm going to say it.
Who cares? Just be honest.
I think he's got a similar game, and I'm not saying he's as good as him. I think he's got a similar game as Burrow.
Okay.
In the sense that
Burrow wasn't Burrow until his 6th, 7th year in college. So
right. I mean, Burrow, his first year at LSU, he couldn't get on the field. He couldn't win the starting job at Ohio State. In his first year at LSU, it wasn't lights out.
No, he was awesome. But he was okay, good,
But I think he's got like that type of escapability, right? He can extend the play. We saw it on Saturday. Saturday was the first time, and it's a spring game. I'm not putting too much into it, but I do think that he finally looked less frantic and less jittery in the pocket. I think his decisions to take off and run were good for the most part. I've gone back and broken down all 3 of his scrambles, and only one of them I thought that he had a guy in the flat.
Yeah, you're right. There was one I thought he was a little quick on, but
yeah. But with that said, Milton was blowing up Simmons on that play.
True.
And he stepped up and he saw the open and he took it off, right? Which last year we would have thrown a freaking party if Kyle did that 3 or 4 times, right? So it's like everybody's complaining he's leaving early, but last year we were wanting Kyle to leave early.
Well, and I'll give Kyle a little bit of leeway. He had mangled ankles all year too, unfortunately. Yeah. That hampered him a little bit. I'm not saying he would have just busted out a 50-yard run if not, but it's like you saw him hobbling out of the bus to going in the Michigan game. It's like, geez, his ankles are screwed. But I mean, again, I defend Kyle a little bit because I not to say he was a great quarterback, but I thought he got even times where he would make an amazing pass. It would be, great catch, Marvin. I'm like, dude, that pass was a dime. At least give Kyle some credit on that one.
Yeah, Kyle has a strong arm.
Yeah, he had a solid arm. I mean, it was best for both parties that he move on, and I'm actually excited. In some ways, I mean, I think Will might win the job, but if Devin wins it, I am perfectly happy and excited with that because I already know what I got with Will. I kind of want to see what I have with Devin. I know he's talented. I don't have any issues with that.
Yeah,
I was actually leading up to the Missouri games. I think I said it on the podcast, but I know I said it to my friends. I was like, I hope he comes out 4 touchdowns, 400 yards, whatever, however he gets it, running, passing, whatever. And we put all doubt to rest. He's the guy going into next year.
Well, he started that Missouri game exactly the way I told people. And it was what I referred to earlier. I told people he's going to look shaky in the first quarter, but he's going to settle in. He's going to pop a couple good passes. There's going to be a good, good long touchdown. He's going to settle in, and he's going to flash enough for people to get excited. And if you look at what happened in that first quarter, I mean, his first pass went into the dirt on a tunnel screen to Mac, right? He's shaky, threw it into the dirt. He's amped up. I played the position. I've done that before when I was really amped up, so I get it. But then there were some flashes. He ended up 4 for 6.
Some sideline pattern passes were really good. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing that stuck out to me the most last year in that first quarter is he had 2 plays where he reverse rolled to the left in order to escape pressure and extend a play. He had one that I wish he could have dropped into the bucket to a Mac. He just overthrew it a little bit. But I wish he could have finished the game. I agree with you on that one.
I think we win the game if he finishes, for what it's worth.
Oh, yeah. Our defense was playing so well, absolutely. And if our receivers would have blocked, I mean, Trey would have had some big runs.
Our receivers under Hartline have not blocked extremely well. I mean, I'm not knocking Hartline. I'm so thrilled he's a Buckeye and he's our coach here. But one thing Zach had over him is his receivers would crush people.
Yeah. But, if you want to understand why it's really heating up right now, I think it's twofold. And why it's getting so loud and divisive in Buckeye Nation again between Howard and Devin. Number one, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on Howard, but if you look at Howard statistically, I mean, if you didn't know who it was, and he was one of 3 guys as an option, and you put his stats on the paper, he'd be picked 3rd, right? He's not Cam Ward. He's not, Michael Penix. He's not, so there's that. And then, you start with what we know about what happened last year, which I believe 100% to be true. He was told he was going to start. Day panicked after a bad practice. McCord pounced a little bit. We don't want to use the word threatened, but he just said, listen, if Kyle's not going to start, it doesn't make sense for him to play. Day went with the safe route. And then you start to couple that with what we're hearing about what's going on in camp right now, which is Devin is rolled with the ones in every drill, every live session, 7-on-7, 11-on-11, every single drill for the entire spring. And then Will rolls out with the ones on Saturday. It's like, what's going on here? I know for a fact that Will has led the team in turnovers in spring. He's about 20 points lower in completion percentage in 7-on-7 than Devin and Julian. These are things that I know to be true. And you start to couple that, and that kind of stuff starts to get out, and it's like, wait a minute, what is Ryan doing again? Do I think Ryan wants to intentionally play the lesser person? No. But is there pressure because of the money? How the internet is, right?
Yeah. I definitely think there's probably to some degree. Like, we paid him this money because you said you needed a quarterback. I feel like if they're even, he'll go with Howard. I think if Brown completely just destroys him and whatever, because there might be other phases of the game he trusts Howard more. I don't know. Then he'll go with Brown if Brown completely beats him out, and he'll say, "Well, the money be darned. I gotta, I gotta go with the guy who can win." I think what I like about talking with, I'm glad you came on the show because I think you're a reasonable individual I can talk to about this.
Well, my ex-wife disagrees, but I appreciate
it. Ex-wives, you can't trust them. Because I was always engaging with, I call them stans, but I don't feel you as a stan. You're a reasonable supporter is how I look at you. And is constant, like, if Will Howard somehow beats him out, it's just the money, or it's just this. It's like, well, do you really think that that's the only thing driving Ryan Day? Is like, I'm sure it's a part of it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not completely neglecting it, but it's like Howard must be doing something. I'll tell you, because Buckeye Scoop right now, which is funny because them and Menace are actually really good friends. Buckeye Scoop is adamant it's Howard. He's blowing everybody away. He's running away with it. I don't believe that either, for what it's worth. And Menace is adamant it's Brown. He's blowing. He's running away with it. I'm like, maybe it's a little closer than we might hear. I don't know. I don't know who to trust on that one. You're an independent source. You're not with either publication, and you have your own sources on this. So I appreciate that a lot. If Brown is beating him out in completion percentage that badly in 7-on-7s, I'd say Well, that has to obviously lend credibility to Brown being the starter. Is it maybe with the 11 on 11? Does Howard run the offense a little better overall? I don't know what.
Well, somebody that shared information with me regarding that, they were very quick to follow up that at the end of the day, here's what I'd heard. If it was based strictly on statistics through camp, the depth chart would be Brown, Sayin, Howard, Lincoln, and Air. But that's not quote unquote real football, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's going to come down to who does he feel comfortable moving the chains on a regular basis. And that's where he might go with Howard. Now, I think that's a little misleading. I mean, Howard, I just don't think he is what the picture's been painted. I mean, he had 7 scrambles in all of last year. He averaged less than 5 rushing attempts per game. He averaged 3.7 yards per carry if you take out his longest run of 80 yards. He's not Tim Tebow either.
No,
I wouldn't even say he's JT Barrett.
Wow, that's saying something. You mean as a runner or
as a runner? I don't think he's a willing runner, and he said as much in his interview at the beginning of the year. He's like, I want to run less than I did last year. Well, you only ran 4 times per game, bro. Yeah. Like less than that is 2.
And then Chip Kelly's influence on this offense, QB's going to run a little bit more, obviously. So
yeah, Chip. I saw a really good breakdown, and I'll send this to you behind the scenes. But somebody went to the coaching clinic last week rather, and the info that came back from Chip in regards to what he looks for his quarterbacks was fascinating. I covered it on my show the other day. But Chip prefers that the running back gets the ball on every read option.
Interesting.
And he wants to keep. He said he thinks the quarterback's
music to Ryan Day's ears on that one,
right? He thinks the quarterback's job, and what he said was, because if I wanted the QB to run, I'd call QB run. I wouldn't call a read option. I'd call QB run. But he wants his quarterback to block that extra defender. Yeah. And the blocking can take place with their eyes, with their reads, with their carryouts. There's ways. He's not talking about physically blocking them. He wants them to get taken out of the play through their actions. So I just think there's a lot of misconceptions out there as to what his QB, what he means by QB run and what he wants his quarterbacks to do.
Well, didn't Howard come here before Chip Kelly got officially hired? So it's interesting that Kelly could come in and say, I don't care what they paid him. I recruited Devin. I'm seeing him in practice, and maybe that gives Devin a leg up there.
Yeah, there's so many things that go into this that we just don't think of as the everyday fan. There's the roster management, there's the portal management, there's the previous relationships, there's the who's really in charge of this, what do they really want, how are they grading these guys?
Yep.
It'll be fun. I will support whoever lines up behind center because I'm a Buckeye fan first. I'm a big Devin Brown fan, and I really, really, really think he can do some things that are special for us. The internet is what's making it a little bit more vitriol than it needs to be.
I agree. At the end of the day, we're all Buckeye fans, and whoever the quarterback is, go win a natty. And I admit there's a steadiness to Will Howard that I like because he's got so much game experience, but there is a unknown factor / big play ability that I like with Devin Brown. Plus, I also like his attitude. So it's like I'm going to say this, and I would slightly prefer Devin Brown just because of the unknown aspect. Plus, he's so talented. But I'm okay with Will. The only thing I get a little bit like tweaked about is when people are, and I'm not saying you obviously don't do this, but I'm saying like when I see on all throughout Twitter, that's kind of like the same crew making conspiracy theories up about why one of them's a starter or not. And again, it's like, oh, it's just because the money if it's Howard. I was like, I really don't think whatever 500 to $1 million, whatever they gave him, is going to determine how we play out our season. That just seems silly for a $1 billion program.
Yeah.
I understand it's still money from boosters and stuff like that, but it's at the same time, it's something Ryan Day could easily go to the boosters and say, look, this is part of the game we have to play. I know you gave money. It doesn't mean he has to start. You want to win games or not. I feel like Devin gives us the best shot to win.
Yeah.
And also, I'll say this: another aspect we're not looking at as far as who gets chosen as a starter. Ryan Day seems happier this offseason. He seems more upbeat, unless he's lost some weight. He seems like he's happier stepping back from the role altogether and being able to overlook the team rather than just focus on play calling. I think giving up play calling is the best thing he's done as a coach.
Absolutely. And it was long overdue. And I think he knew that. And I think we all got a chuckle out of the press conference for the Cotton Bowl last year when, Drinkowitz was sitting there talking about how he gave it up and it was the right thing to do and everything. And all Buckeye Nation's looking at Ryan like, dude, are you listening to this, man? Come on, it's time. Now, I don't know if it could have worked out any better. I know for a fact it couldn't have worked out any better. I mean, the way the offseason that the guys had, it's just, I want to go to Vegas with Ryan right now, right?
Yeah.
I want to do what he does at the tables because he hasn't made a wrong move yet. He brings in Bill O'Brien, which I thought was a great hire.
Me too.
And then 3 weeks later, he's gone and he brings in Chip Kelly. Are you kidding me?
Yep. What a replacement. It's like, well, I lost Joe Montana. Let's go get Tom Brady.
Yeah. And you talk about looking a lot happier. Chip Kelly's just, and I love listening to that guy talk too.
Oh, me too.
But he talked about somebody who's been set free. One other thing that I really think we need to think about, and everybody, there's this arrogance right now in Buckeye Nation that everybody thinks we're just going to go out there and roll everybody next year and win the Natty. Georgia was down by 3 scores against South Carolina last year at home. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really worried about Will Howard being able to bring us back at the end of a game, having to throw the ball downfield.
Okay.
That's where I think that the early part of the schedule gets Devin settled in. And I think he's more apt to be able to pull that off. We don't know because we haven't seen it, but we kind of do know with Will that he can't do it because we haven't seen it and he's been given a chance.
I'd say Will had a lot less talent to work with though at K-State. There's that. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying there's also that element to add into it. His best receiver was a fullback tight end, and here he's just got receivers 7 deep.
Yeah. To be fair, his completion percentage was higher the year before when he had the Knowles kid who's playing for the Vikings now.
Yeah.
So there is something to be said for that. You could counter that with, he was playing against Big 12 defenses, so it could have evened itself out.
That's true.
And if
other than Jim Knowles, they were pretty bad.
Yeah. And why haven't we seen, if the reports from camp are accurate, why haven't we seen that jump in production because of the talent around them? It's hard though, man.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard in 14 or 15 practices to get a feel for it, especially without not being able to see it. You have to trust on what people are telling you.
Yep.
The couple caveats that have been pretty consistent is that Devin's out there with the ones and all the drills and the sessions. He's done really well. He's got the stronger arm, and Will has struggled with the deep ball. And that Sayin has the best ball placement and accuracy out of all of them.
I think Sayin is the most talented passer of all of them, but he's obviously not ready to be the guy.
No, he looks like he should be in a remake of The Sandlot right now.
Yeah, he's small.
15 years old, man. Yeah, they should never remake that movie, by the way.
No, please don't. That movie, the classics, don't mess with it. I just watched that a few weeks ago. I was like, man, this movie's great. I agree. And then unfortunately, we'll probably end up losing Noland at some point, but because Sayin's got the inside track, unless Nolan makes a huge jump that we just don't know about. But Sayin seems to have the inside track. And next year, if say Brown's a starter, what do you think happens with Sayin if Brown decides to come back?
I don't know. That's when things get complicated. I told you, before I saw somebody said, one of their biggest fears is that Brown wins us, leads us to a natty, but he's not good enough to go one and done. What does that do to the room? Sayin's coming back. You got Tavian coming in next year.
I don't understand the argument because I'd rather win the natty. And then deal with that later. Yeah. It's like if it's not Sayin, I understand Sayin looks really great. I get it. There's always going to be great quarterbacks Ryan Day can go get.
Yeah.
It's not like if we don't have him, our program is screwed.
Yeah. If the worst case scenario is that Brown wins us a natty this year, sticks around for another year, and Sayin transfers, which means we go with Brown for another year, who just won us a natty, and then
St. Clair's coming in.
And St. Clair's coming in behind him. I guess it's not that, when you peel the onion back, it's like, okay. There's just so much hype around Julian right now that people will lose their mind if we lose him.
I'll lose my mind if we win the natty. So,
fair enough.
I thought about it. We were talking about it before the show started. I thought about it. I'm like, well, who cares? I mean, if we lose Sayin, we lose Sayin. I mean, it sucks,
Yeah.
but I want to see him play for the Buckeyes. I want to see him to be the starter. But you don't start Howard over Brown simply because you might lose Sayin the next year. If Brown can go win you a natty, it's Brown 10 out of 10 times. It's not even a discussion. It's not even
a discussion. 2 months ago, we didn't have Sayin. So
yeah, exactly. And we weren't even thinking about Sayin. So it was like
people would be if Sayin wasn't here, there would be so much chatter for Lincoln Kienholz. It would be unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree. I think Lincoln's on his way out, unfortunately. So,
well, they always talk about who's the most popular guy on the football team, right? It's the backup quarterback.
That backup quarterback. Every time. The second Brown throws an interception, it's like, who's the next guy? I'm tired of this crap. It's like, really, it's been one pass, guys. So anyway, we went long, but it was worth it, man. Tell them where they can find you, buddy.
You can go ahead and find us on YouTube at the Best Damn Pod in the Land. We're also on Spotify. We're hanging out on Twitter quite a bit. That's where we're at. We drop episodes every Tuesday and Friday. And if you want to check us out, subscribe, that'd be awesome. I really appreciate you having me on, man.
No, man, I appreciate you coming on. It was a fun discussion. I'm having a blast, honestly. And I was like, I saw the time. I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to go a little longer. This has been fun.
Oh, we didn't screw up the algorithm.
Nah, who cares? I think people would get something out of this conversation, and actually out of your insight and your knowledge of Devin Brown, because that's what I said. That's what I said on Twitter. I want to bring somebody on who understands it better than I do. So
yeah.
And I appreciate everything you've had to say on here, and obviously, this is a show that does not edit anything other than blank spaces. So
cool.
Everything will be on the air, and I'll get it up as soon as I can, guys. As always, guys, I'm saying that as it's on right now. As always, guys, I appreciate you guys. Go check out Dan on Twitter. You see his Twitter feed right there, or X, or whatever the heck it is. I'm going to put all the links in the description below where you can find their podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Dan, as always, man, we appreciate you coming on. We're going to have you back because it's going to be a fun off season because we're going to have to figure out crap to talk about as a Buckeye podcast.
Yeah, cool. We'll have you on as well. I appreciate it, Corey.
Absolutely appreciate you guys. As always, guys, subscribe to the channel. If you like what you saw, like the video, helps the algorithm. As always, helps us grow. Go check out the Best Damn Pod in the Land. Obviously, go check them out, subscribe to them, and like their videos. Help them grow. Free Buckeye content for everybody is better for everybody. As always, appreciate you guys. Goodbye. God bless. And, of course, go Bucks.
Go Bucks.